that said, you have that strength there on the perimeter and some emerging talent up front. Did you, I mean, with Parker or Kobe or whoever at the point, how important do you view that as that somebody emerges strong in that position?
Well, I just want, and we all want quality of play. Who emerges is yet to be determined, and we'll see how that works. If you look at both Kobe and Parker, they're different. You know, one is 5'9", and one is 6'4". I think that's a great change-up. You know, both guys can really shoot the basketball. But Kobe isn't relegated to just playing by himself out there. He could play with Kadeem. You know, Kadeem could slide over there as well. I mean, he played as much point guard last year as anybody in our program, so he's experienced there. We really have 3 players that have experience at that position, which is always something you want, because if, you know, God forbid anything happens, sometimes even foul trouble, you want to be able to keep the pace of play up, and that position has a lot to do with that.
You were saying probably Kadeem more off the ball, though? Is that still the plan?
And we talked to Kadeem about that. Kadeem brings something that we didn't have on last year's team, and that sometimes you can take for granted, because we really had a string of about 4 consecutive seasons with a perimeter player that you could count on that would guard the other team's best player. You know, I go back as far as Kyle Fogg in his last year. He was great at embracing that challenge, and I think was voted as the all-defensive team player on our team. And then obviously Nick Johnson, TJ, Rondé. And I think this year Kadeem, you know, his quickness, his toughness, his experience, he wants to be that guy, but it's hard to be that type of player and then also be the point guard. So I think by taking him off the ball, it might free him up to bring a valuable asset to the table where he could be our defensive stopper. And I think that's something that he's talked about with me that he would like to do, and I think he would be a great candidate to have that role.
So is he more 2-3 than he is?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Some of the guards you have seem to be a little on the quieter side. I didn't know what you see, like, leadership-wise emerging from any of those guys or anybody else who could really.
Yeah, you know, I've answered a lot of questions about who's going to be the leader of this team. You know, even the leader last year, and you know, my opinion and how we do it is, your best players are always your leaders in basketball, especially college basketball. And that might mean you're a freshman, and he might not be the rah-rah guy or bring a wealth of experience, you know, huddle his team. But that's okay, as long as he's true to himself and they lead through their own personality. The team's going to follow the direction of the players who play the most, shoot the most, score the most, right? Your best players, they're kind of the guiding force on every team. And, you know, once in a while you're really lucky because you have an experienced natural leader who is your best player. Nick Johnson would come to mind, or TJ McConnell. But Kadeem Allen, he'll have the utmost respect of this year's team because of how hard he plays. He's really unselfish, and he's a very talented player. He might not be somebody who talks a lot, but that's okay. I think that leading by example is every bit as powerful as sometimes what you say. We've had guys sometimes that, you know, they like to go to the movies in August. They want to go bowling as a group. And then when the chips are down and it's 65-65 and you're at, you know, that team in your conference that means the most, you look at him and you don't see anything in his eyes, you know. And all of a sudden at that moment, he's no longer your leader. So I think a lot of times the definition of the leadership is how do you do when it matters the most, and who you are every day in practice. You know, that's what's going to gain the respect of your teammates. And I'll go back to TJ and Nick. You know, those guys, the reason that they were respected so much is they really embraced those big moments, and they were ready for those big moments. Rondé Hollis Jefferson was a sophomore, and you know, maybe he didn't talk as much as those guys would have, but he was one of our leaders in his last year here because you really respected how he was when the chips were down. And his leadership came more from example. And I think this year there'll be a number of different players that emerge, but I see it going that way.